Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey everybody, welcome. Happy Thursday.
Welcome everybody.
Happy Thursday.
Oh, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday.
It's one day closer.
Did you forget what day it was?
For a minute there, it's like all the days start running together, especially since I had Monday off and it was, a paid day off. So it's like today feels like a Wednesday,
Yeah, right. It does. It does.
Yeah. So anyway, how are you?
My
today?
days are all goofy anyway. I'm good. I'm good. For everybody out there, more info. My mother is now home. We're working through stuff. It brings its own set of challenges, and hey, we're just going to keep working through it. It's not like we have a choice here.
Yep, that's the only thing you can do.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. Real quick, and this will be almost one of the last times you hear us talk about it. Is this, Brandy? You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Alabama Bigfoot Conference, ladies and gentlemen. This is next weekend. It starts on Thursday or Friday evening. I'm gonna say Thursday evening. Oh my goodness, Friday evening. We are having dinner at the Western Sizzlin. All the seating is reserved in the room we have, but don't worry, we're not shutting the doors. Just come on in, grab your dinner, have something to eat. Come on and visit. We're not going to turn anybody away. On Saturday, of course, we've got a great set of speakers lined up for you. It is at the Anniston Performing Arts Center. Tickets are $30 online, $35 at the door. So if you want to just come on in for a little bit or come in for the day, it'll be great. It'll be great to see everybody. We're going to have great speakers such as, of course, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Martin Groves, Greg Ogles, Jason McLean, the Blondes and Booze, Daryl Denton, Barton Nunnelly, and our MC for the day is going to be Tex Wesson, and with our sponsor, Sidekicks.
Yay! I'm going to go ahead and bring Josh hopped on. I'll bring him up since he's hosting.
Hey,
how are you?
Hosting.
Good. How are you guys?
We're good. Glad it's Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday's just the day before Friday to me, because then Friday I got to do the show, but then I have a full weekend ahead of me. Weekends where we do a lot of work.
You do. You absolutely do.
And then you've got all your shows. Oh my goodness, you've got Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday.
Yeah,
so that's just that'll wear you out.
I'm sorry, you were talking. Go ahead.
I think she lagged.
No, I was finished.
Okay, yeah, I was saying we did last night because Barton wasn't on, and so I said, you know what, I'll just go ahead and jump on and do what we got to do here.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to go ahead and bring Jill up. She looks like she's ready. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
And anybody that is even remotely interested in Bigfoot, I'm sure has watched A Flash of Beauty. I don't know anybody who hasn't.
Right, exactly. And if you haven't, you need to subscribe and go watch, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. Yeah, so I'm a fan. Great job.
Well, tonight we have three blondes. We actually have 3 blondes.
We do.
Blondes and booze for sure tonight.
You're missing your wig, Josh. You're missing your wig.
I know. You know what? I used to be blonde. I was blonde at one time. I'm not joking. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
I was blonde for like 2 months. And I did it because my friend he's blonde haired. And so he went as Guile. I don't know if anybody knows who that is from Street Fighter at Halloween.
Mm-mm.
So to crash his little party, I did it too because we both had the same kind of hair. So I went as Guile too, and he was the military dude on Street Fighter,
right?
Street Fighter 2, anyway. And so he was. To this day, he's still kind of bitter about that, but
right.
He's still kind of bitter.
Only time I've ever been blonde in my life. I have a picture from it.
Oh, you got to show it sometime. That's hilarious. Well, if you don't want to be blonde tonight, you could be the Boo.
Yeah, I'll be the Boo. I'm not, actually that's like my favorite character in all of the that and Bowser on the Nintendo, the little Boo guy.
Yeah.
I just ordered a Boo shirt. I'm going to be wearing that pretty soon. So, Jill, how are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
Yeah. How's everything been with the? I'm sure you're still rolling along despite the haters that don't believe the way that you guys believe. How are you handling that? Because everybody believes that Bigfoot is a big monkey running around in the woods. And you know that's how it is.
I learned something very valuable early on in this whole process, and it came into play just a couple nights ago. I was on a podcast that I didn't know was pretty extreme flesh and blood. And I don't think they knew where I stood with things. But I found that if you just meet people where they are, I mean, I'm not going to, come in, kicking the door in, guns a-blazing, all paranormal and orbs and crazy, and just, shove it in their face. But if I can kind of feel where people are and what their comfort level is, I can meet them there and then kind of slowly, guide them in my direction. So, I'm not here to convince people to think one way or the other. I'm just trying to help people share their stories and their truth and, try to, increase more data points in all this. So we have more information to work from and get a little bit closer to understanding the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
What show were you on?
I would have to look up the name. I don't want to like call anyone out. I can message it to you. It comes out in a week, but it was fine. Everyone was really
it was a podcast.
It was a podcast. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
But you could see, I could sense and I could feel it was palpable how uncomfortable they were getting. The more I kept saying, look, these things are happening. And, it doesn't matter if you believe it's a flesh and blood creature or if you're leaning towards the more spiritual aspect of it, people are having these experiences. Mm-hmm. And if we don't talk about it, we're skewing the data. We're not giving the full report.
Absolutely. And you're, and that's the thing, these people, they're just closed-minded, and I will admit, I was that person too. I thought they were flesh and blood until Brandy and I went to the LBL and we've seen like orbs and stuff that we can't explain, and we've seen eye shine, or Brandy's seen eye shine right before we saw the orbs. So explain that,
Yeah.
So that's when we kind of started, coming over like, maybe they're not just flesh and blood, there's a little more to them than what we thought.
Yeah, definitely. Like when Brett and I got into this, when we started kind of our Bigfoot journey, I guess you'd call it, it was back in about 2012. And I just have to preface as like, we're native Oregonians. So growing up out here, it's just something people talk about, like since you're exposed to it very early. So I never thought much of it, just that, there's something out in the woods. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a monkey man type thing, undiscovered, primate. And then in 2012, we were invited to Beachfoot, which is a gathering of researchers and investigators on the Oregon coast. And we went into it just like, because why would you ever turn down that opportunity? Like, yeah, we're going to go. And so that's where there were different little camps at the event where there were the flesh and blood people, and then there were whisperings about, the more paranormal stuff and whatnot. And so we had heard things then. And we're just like, wow, that's, we can't dismiss it. We weren't there. We don't know.
Sure.
But man, getting into this, that just, we went down the rabbit hole really fast.
Yeah. So the beach deal was your first big.
Our initiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. So right out of the gate, we met like Ron Moorhead, Peter Byrne, Todd Neese, Diane Stocking, and a lot of the I guess players in the community. Right. And we stayed in touch with Todd and with Ron through these events. And basically, I'm going to fast forward. What happened was, well, let me jump back a little bit. So when Brett and I, so we're married, both filmmakers. And one of the conditions when we started dating was, I don't want to say conditions. The situation was, he's like, are you into the paranormal? Do you like Coast to Coast AM? What are your feelings about Art Bell? And I'm like, I'm in. And then the other sticking point was I needed to either skateboard or snowboard. So as a snowboarder, so it worked out. But we had this passion for the paranormal, for cryptids, for UFOs, and we always talked about someday it would be so awesome to do a project that aligned with what we were interested in. So fast forward to March of 2020, when everything came to a screeching halt. We were in the middle of filming a commercial campaign, which quickly ended, and we had a lot of time on our hands. And so we started just binging as many shows as we could, every like paranormal, Bigfoot, UFO documentary. And we didn't feel like we were seeing what we wanted to see. We felt like, we're like, well, let's do it. Now's the time. And so that was really kind of our second gate of initiation, I guess. So we ended up back at Beachfoot and we started filming the documentary. And what's interesting is when we started, it was kind of like what was it called? It was called the Paranormal Paradox. And the whole idea is we were going to explore people who've had experiences with things that aren't supposed to exist and how they handle that. We really wanted to get into the psychology of it because we didn't see anyone addressing like the PTSD or how it was like, once that paradigm shift happens, what happens next? Because it turns your life upside down. A lot of people we talked to, it in some ways it improved their life, in other ways it was a detriment. But we were going to do Bigfoot, we were going to do UFOs, we were going to do like hauntings and ghosts, and we started to kind of film a little bit in each. But everything, the universe has a sense of humor, because the more I fought against Bigfoot, the more it pushed me, it redirected us. I was leaning more towards doing like hauntings and ghost stuff and investigations like that. And Brett just was like, the writing's on the wall. This is the rabbit hole we need to go down. And everyone we interviewed would make an introduction or give us like a little tip, like, you need to talk to so-and-so. Or if you think this is interesting, you need to start asking questions about this. And it just kept going and going. And yeah, we thought that we had just film over the summer and then wrap it up quick, put out a fun little video by Christmas time. Oh no. It got to the point where the following year, we realized we had so much footage. There was no way anyone was going to sit through like a 5-hour, 6-hour film. So, and what we were finding out also in a lot of these interviews is that people would start talking, they'd tell the gist of their experience, and they'd pause and ask us, do you want to hear the other stuff?
Mm-hmm.
You want to hear the weird stuff? And we're like, yes, tell us everything.
Right.
And so then people would say, yeah, we were seeing orbs. There was a UFO. I was experiencing like telepathy. Things were moving around. And it got to, at first it was kind of like, oh, wow, that's an interesting point to put in. But then there was so much of it, we realized we had to split it into 2 documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are.
Here you are. And here you are. Yeah, you're what is something that filming these that really sticks out, like one encounter, like you've interviewed someone, what is one that really sticks in your mind, like, wow? Because I can tell you mine from your show. You tell me first.
Well, honestly, every person we sat down with, I could say that person's. I mean, each of those people could have been their own documentary in and of themselves, because they had enough stuff happening, enough interesting things that really piqued my interest. I'm going to answer it a couple ways, because my default is, I always say, well, Larry Turner, and he's the one who the hand reached through his tent.
That's the one I was gonna,
and I say that that one always comes back to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, the ones we get into in the sequel, like Jack and his encounter with the deer, or even Harold and Cody at the end. Whoa. But Larry's encounter really kind of sticks with me, because where it happened is maybe 30 minutes from here, from where I'm sitting right now. So it's just a reminder that I'm closer than I realize. And that was Larry was one of the first interviews we did at Beachfoot. And to hear about that kind of interaction, it got seared into my brain, because I am not a good camper, so to speak. I like being in the outdoors, but yeah, I think about that. I think about that. Like, how would I react if something started me through the tent? But we've heard similar stories. We've heard a lot of stories. Like Mel Scahan talks about that, about them coming messing with the tent and whatnot. So,
wow, that to me would be my worst nightmare, honestly. And he said the way it had his head in its hands, I mean, it could have just like, and broke his neck, that quick. So yeah, that's scary stuff. There's people asking, what's the documentary? It's A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed is what it's called.
That's the first documentary, and the sequel is A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot.
There you go. Yes, worth watching. Welcome back, Brandy.
Did you accomplish your goal?
I don't know. This internet, I swear, it just likes to work sometimes and not all the time.
I thought maybe you went on a mission and you returned. You were gone for 113 years, and in our time, it was only like 10 minutes. Because that is how it works, right? I mean, if you go outside of our reality, we are moving way faster than the reality we were spun off from.
True. But no, I just had to reboot my system because I had a real bad lag, and I didn't want to jump in and step on people. So I'm just like, okay, I hope this works now.
Yeah. You know what's funny, and this is kind of off topic, but it is on topic of what we're kind of talking about here, which is paranormal and Bigfoot. I answered a call one time on a patrol that I don't do patrol where I have this past month. I've had to, but years ago I was working for another company, and I answered a call, and this guy was crazy. I mean, he was out of his mind, and he had his shirt off, and he was screaming that he was from an alternate reality. He kept saying that.
Oh, wow.
And the police came, and they're like, do you have an ID? And he goes, no, I don't have an ID because I'm not from here. And he kept saying that. And I don't know, it always just stuck with me. Like, what if he really was
right
from an
or was it a drug-induced delirium?
No, he wasn't on drugs. No, I know drugs. He was not on drugs. He just didn't have his shirt, and he didn't have his shoes because he said that he had gotten beat up and he was in the hood. And he was really out of place. And he says, "Hey, look, dude, I'm not from here." And he kept trying to argue. And so one of the cops made a joke like, "Oh, so you're, what's the guy's name from Terminator? John, whatever the guy's name was.
I don't know.
What's his name that saved everybody or whatever? The last Terminator, he was like the bad guy. I don't remember the whole movie because I fell asleep. But John, whatever his name is, he goes back in time and saves everybody or whatever. And they made a joke, but I told my partner, because at that time we were 2-man teams because it was such a bad place and it was hot. John Connor, there you go. Yeah. So I got in my car and I was with this guy named Joe Abrego, and for years we talked about that guy. Like, what if he really was, And now that I'm doing the show, I just recently interviewed somebody who she claims that she got stuck here.
Oh, wow.
I mean, she says it's a real thing. And she kind of goes in time with the idea that, and it started off with the Bigfoot story. She gave me a Bigfoot story, and I asked her where she's from. She said, "I'm from Idaho, on the Oregon border," which consequently you're from Oregon, Jill, but Eastern Oregon's going to secede and become part of Idaho. It's called the Idaho Initiative, and it looks like it's going to happen.
It's not. It's not.
Well, 57%.
Idaho's a big talker. No, trust it. That might be what Idaho wants, but we spend a lot of time in Eastern Oregon, and we consider it a home away from home. And I'll put my money on Oregon. Stay. Let me put it like this: I'll put my money on the state of Jefferson happening before the greater Idaho.
I don't think it's going to happen now, but I think in the future it will, because Oregon is very much divided. My friends live up in LaGrange, not LaGrange.
LeGrand?
LeGrand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a bunch of friends up in Eastern Oregon, and they do not feel a part of Western Oregon at all. And I think that maybe not now, but at some point it will. And I also think Texas is going to become its own country. People have a hard time believing that this is going to happen, but trust me, when you have neighbors that fight with each other over politics. I saw it happen just the other day. A guy went over there and yanked the sign out of somebody's yard. The cops were in there. We live in a nice neighborhood, but they were fighting over politics. And so when neighbors are trying to kill each other, I think eventually there's going to be some fracturing. I'm not going to get political because that's not what this is, but I do think that people in America have a hard time wrapping their mind around something changing. Well, I've been in countries that were war-torn, and I've been to Guatemala during the Civil War. I'm not going to get into what I was doing there, but I was there and I saw it. And the people, they were like, when I was there, it was toward the end, and they were people that were saying, 30 years ago, we never could have seen this happening. Never, that this small little group of insurgents would do what they did and cause an entire war that went on for 30 years. That was only ended by black operations from the United States government, which aren't really black operations. Now everybody knows that they did it, but at the time it was like, well, we weren't there. Yes, we were. I'm not me, but they were there. Right. And so there was a war going on that people did not plan for. So I think that this country is very poised to move in another direction. And I think it's even biblical. I think it's going to happen. And I don't think people are going to expect it. Now, you would know more. You're from there, so I'm not going to argue the point. But trust me, at some point it will happen, because I don't know about being Idaho, but I think Eastern Oregon and Western Oregon are on two different planes, man, big time.
It's, surprisingly, and when you had me jump on your show a couple weeks ago, the guest that was on was mentioning there was some reference to Oregon and California. And I was like, I've traveled extensively through California as well as Oregon, and they're predominantly red states. It's a lot more agriculture and rural areas than people realize, especially Oregon. It's the Portland metro area. It's Eugene, Ashland, Salem. Little bit. It's always the metro areas. But it's the Idaho thing. Yeah, we'll see how that pans out. I love Idaho. Idaho's a great place to visit. I do love it.
I don't think it's as pretty as Oregon, but I mean, I love Oregon. I stayed there for a while when I was young. I worked on a cherry farm near the Dalles.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It was awesome. There was a guy I bunked with that swore up and down that he saw Bigfoot. And I was like 17 years old, and I was sort of intrigued because I had seen something when I was 15, but I didn't think to really go deep into his encounter. He also took a lot of LSD. So I was like, okay, yeah, this dude, he's probably, his name was David, and he was cool, but he was like, yeah, man, I was out here hiking, by the Columbia River, and, I saw this Bigfoot, man. And then he's like, you're like, yeah, okay. Well, nobody's going to take a lot of credence into that because you're blowed out of your mind. And of course, he's like, you want to hit an LSD? And I'm like, no, we got to work tomorrow. He goes, that makes it better, man. You're just up all day. It's like, you just got this energy, and I was like, well, when do we sleep? We will, like under the trees. I'm like, dude, good, man. It's orb weaver spiders like this big. I'm like, I'm all right, man. I don't want to do that, man. It was an adventure. And I got stuck in Idaho, of all places, in Boise on the way back. And I had to get my uncle to wire me some money because my dad wouldn't do it. And my dad's like, oh, I told you not to go up there, dumbass. My dad's got more money than Croesus. He's not going to help me. He's just like, whatever, And so I had to get my uncle to help me get out of there. And the car broke down and got back to Texas. But then again, I got that wanting to leave again. And I ended up in California. The interesting thing about that is I traveled all up and down the Pacific coast. And you're right. It's predominantly agriculture, but the cities are where all the people are. So they dominate the politics and pretty much everything. And if you look at the cities, it's LA, San Francisco, San Jose, pretty much twin cities. And then you got, Portland and Seattle, and they're all very, very blue. And but they're the cool spots, though. I mean, like I spent a lot of time in those cities, and I enjoyed being, just kind of being a vagabond, rogue, whatever, for a little while. But then I got tired of it. But you go to Bishop, and they're like, yeah, I was down in Bishop for a while, and I went into a diner, and they absolutely hate LA and everybody from there. And they are back then in the 90s, they were violent about it. And they explained it to me. I didn't understand. I was wearing a Dodgers hat. And they're like, you're not from around here. And I'm like, I'm from Texas. And they were like, well, why are you wearing an LA Dodgers hat? I said, I just got it when I was down on, on Venice Beach or whatever. And they were like, well, people don't wear those hats around here. And I'm like, why? It's California. They're like, this one old timer sat down and he told me, he goes, we fought a war with LA. And LA stole our water. Go look at that desert out there. That was Lake Bishop. And I did not know that. And so I was like, okay, I just thought I'd be here for Mule Days. And they were like, yeah, well, let's tell you why we hate LA. And I'm like, okay. And so they told me. And then when I traveled up the Pacific Coast Highway, I stopped in the Napa Valley for a while. Like I veered off, and then I went to Pismo Beach. And I learned a lot about the culture there. I loved California. It was awesome. But now it's a whole different world. It's just a completely different world. And it is so divided. It is so divisive now. There's no way. I mean, it almost became North and South recently. And I think Oregon will become East and West. At some point, the federal government will not be able to control what's happening. They just will not. They're going to lose. There's no way. I mean, and people will say, well, it's not going to be cash. That's not true because that's their personal piggy bank. That's how they keep printing money. It's fiat. But eventually bricks will catch up. And then the United States is going to start to kind of break off and say, look, one or two states can't pull all the weight. It just can't happen. But back to Bigfoot. I'm sorry. Let's digress on that.
No, it's all good. You're good. I didn't know anything about this Oregon.
I didn't either. And I'm sitting here listening going, I
Jill,
don't want
go
to.
ahead.
If I can just add one thing. So here's kind of why I'm like, the Idaho thing, I'm not concerned about it. As Oregonians, I'll say Washingtonians also, we have a bigger threat facing us. We're about 300 years overdue for like a 9.0 mega earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And that can happen basically any day. And they're talking about tsunami damage all the way into Portland. Just, it's going to be bad. And so I think everyone is a little bit more concerned about that and having an exit plan and where to go and whatnot. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's not that we're disregarding the local political situation, but we're overdue for the earthquake, and that's what we're focused on.
So is California too. It's all overdue. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm sitting on the New Madrid fault line.
And it's overdue as well. Yeah.
we have a fault line here in Austin too, but it goes like this instead of like this. So it's like, you can see it though, if you go off a 360. But let's get back to Jill because Paranormal Pixie's pissed off. So let's go back to Jill. It's not you, it's me. She's mad at me. I guarantee it. They don't like to hear me. So go ahead, Jill. Go ahead.
So
it's all good, Josh.
where should we jump?
I'm gonna have to start just doing my show and just stay to my own show. It's just what's gonna have to happen.
You know what? This is our show, and we appreciate you being here. We didn't want you here, we wouldn't have you here. So
exactly. It's just like people just have to calm down, relax. It's a show. It's entertainment. Breathe.
Go ahead. Yeah. I'm going to be quiet.
You're good, Josh. You talk when you want. I'm sorry, Jill.
One of the things I wanted to add that's been really interesting is when the first documentary came out, it definitely leans more towards traditional Bigfoot information, flesh and blood, historical. And when it came out, we got a lot of people telling us that they refused to watch it because we don't touch on the paranormal element and we are foolish to avoid and ignore these matters. And I was like, just wait, we have to finish editing it. So then when the sequel came out, they were satisfied. But then we had the people from the first documentary who refused to watch it because it has all this weird paranormal stuff. So, it's like they say, you can't please everyone, but I'm happy to say that there are people who don't agree with what's in the paranormal Bigfoot, but they're being open-minded. They are watching it. So,
I think it's very unique though that you did two different viewpoints in two different documentaries. That's awesome. Because you had the first one was one way and the second one was another. It helps people open their minds to different things. Yeah. I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seemed like the fair thing to do. We didn't want to be accused of being biased one way or the other, and honestly, we just didn't have enough time to put it all into one documentary. So, and to take it a step further, you'll film 2 to 3 hours with someone, and you only end up using a minute, maybe 2 minutes of what they have to say, and so much stuff is on the cutting room floor that we made a decision to do something that's really unheard of in the documentary world. And we're making all of the full-length interviews available. And Brett's actually editing the interviews down from the sequel right now, as we speak, down the hall. And we'll start posting those probably within the next month.
Wow. Very cool. So can you talk about maybe some of the encounters you personally have had out there in the woods?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm just going to say, I have not had a sighting. Mm-hmm. Just to put that out there. Right out of the gate, when we went into the woods with Daryl Adams and Tobe Johnson at the habituation area Daryl Adams had on his property, and up in the woods behind his property that they called the Owl Moon Lab and the Owl Moon Wilderness. I mean, right out of the gate, we were finding huge tracks where you could put your hand in and feel like the individual toes and whatnot. And it was such a trip. I'm like, okay, this is what people are talking about. Meanwhile, Daryl, who is so accustomed to this, is like, oh yeah, there's tracks everywhere. Come on. And then would just kind of lead us like to the next thing or where he wanted to show us where other things happened. But specifically in that area, there's definitely something going on. You go, it's almost like a dish, like a bowl that you're descending into. And there were times you go in there and it's nice and bright and sunny and the birds are chirping, you hear the bugs. And then it's like someone flips a switch and it's like a vacuum. The sound is sucked out. There's just an off feeling. You get that kind of fight or flight.
Right.
Feeling, and you want to take off. And it's almost dizzying. And so we had experienced that in there. We'd also, while filming, one time, like Brett was unloading gear from the car, and Mike Ferry, our cinematographer, he and I were kind of looking down into the bowl to go. It's a pretty steep little hike down. We could hear something that sounded like a person, something on 2 feet,
Right.
splashing through the water. Like, say you were like in a creek, maybe up to your knees, and that sound of kind of running or like splashing along. And we're like, that is so weird, because there was no one around. There was no one else out there. And we went back and we told Tobe and Daryl this, and they're like, there's no creek. And I'm like, well, there has to be, because we could hear all the splashing.
Yeah.
It was like, right just down over that one little spot where those trees are. We're like, no. So then, of course, the next time we went back, we investigated. No sign of water. So that was a little concerning. But then we had other instances down there. We took our associate producer, who is kind of our token skeptic in the group. But she's sensitive to stuff. She walked down there and she's like, I'm vibrating. What is going on? And the spot she was standing in, where I'd been feeling a little weird too, all her hair started, going up like a static electricity. And she was peeling one of those little mandarin oranges. And her hands were just shaking. She's like, I don't know what's going on. And when I would step into that area, it felt like you were, I don't know, holding on to like a low voltage electric fence or something. It was very, very weird. Gosh. And then the year before last, on Mother's Day, because where else would you spend Mother's Day but in we're sitting there at Brett, and it's just Brett and I, and he went up and kind of went off in one direction, just to investigate a little and look around. And it's almost like he kind of disappeared in the trees. And I kept thinking of Daryl Adams got an incredible shot of this thing. It almost looks like he calls it the Tin Man. It looks like a spaceman type. It reminds me of the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz, but this thing. And I'm like, I can't see Brett. He's over in this area where Daryl's gotten other photos of something kind of like fleeing, Bigfoot-ish. Right behind me, a little bit over the hill, I start hearing a woman laugh.
That's odd.
Yeah, odd. That was creepy. But during our interview with Tara Harris, talking about communication with Bigfoot, we heard something howl just behind her on the hill. And then when we wrapped, we were just talking about, okay, well, that was great. Now, what next? There was a sound, just a stone's throw, maybe, like we were right next to 2 parked cars on a logging road. And how do I even explain? Maybe just 10 or 20 feet beyond that, in the woods, in the trees, it sounded like a baby crying. It sounded like a child in distress, baby crying. Yeah, and that natural, that like, oh my gosh, I have to go see what's going on. And then all of us stopped. And Tara, who's a psychic medium, and her friend that she works with, who also has abilities, they kind of stopped and they're like, you guys heard that too, right? That wasn't just us. And we're like, yeah, we heard it. And then it was kind of that weird, gross feeling of like, something's off. So those were the main things that we've experienced. Also, for me personally, when we were getting footage of the county dump in the first movie, and that was, near Bandon, Brett was flying the drone and Mike was standing next to him, and I'm standing right next to Mike, and we're up against a tree line, and something kept like something was hitting my back, like little pebbles or pine cones. I don't know, but I thought it was Mike being like just fooling around. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, well, he's standing right next to me.
Wow.
And I just remember turning around and looking at the tree line and just kind of like, okay, you got me. And, but again, no proof of anything, but just another.
So it sounds like to me, honestly, I feel like you have had encounters, just not a visual, you know.
I just haven't had the visual. Yeah. I think that's what's going on. And then, well, as far as visual, we were in Nebraska on a reservation at night, and we did see that. I don't want to call it eye shine because we weren't there was no light reflection, but the eye glow, that almost bioluminescent changing color eyes. It reminds me of like when you're a kid watching cartoons and the screen's black and here come two eyes and they like with the pupils and they blink and then that's all you see. That's what it was. Brett managed to snap a photo with his iPhone. He used it in the sequel. But yeah, he got two photos, one with the eye open and then as it's blinking, and it's almost like almond shaped. Like,
oh wow.
So
wow.
Yeah, I want to say something really quick about the chat. You know, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude or whatever, but you know, to apologize to Paranormal, Pixie, Laura, whatever. Nobody's telling you to leave. She may have already left, whatever. And this isn't an excuse, but you know, I've spent my day getting attacked. And so, you know, I just was quick to say, look, you know, she put in all capital letters, you know, something snarky, and it was snarky. But in her defense, you know, I do talk and I am long-winded. And at times I need to be, hey, you know, be quiet, whatever.
Well,
Jill needs to be able to say what she has to say.
I don't want to cut you off, Josh, but I'm going to because you don't need to apologize. Unfortunately, everyone knows the rules. You're not allowed to attack our guests, anybody in chat, us, or nobody. Negative comments, they're to keep to themselves. They know this. And when they start
I don't
doing
think
it,
she was really trying to be negative. I think she was just saying, hey, I want to hear what she has to say. And she probably does. And Jill's a good guest.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
In due
I just
time.
don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I didn't mean to say she's pissed off, but she did look kind of angry because she put it all in caps. But, you know, I get it. She wants to hear what she has to say, and she has a lot to say. And so I personally, I do want to apologize. I'm not trying to be.
You don't have to.
When I was on Texas show, everybody already knows, like last, Monday, somebody said something and I snapped, and I'm sorry. But it kind of puts you on edge when it's constant. You know, it's a constant thing, and it seems like it's coordinated at times. I don't think she was being that way. I don't think she's one of those. And I'm sorry to be disruptive, and I invited Jill on the show, and I feel bad because I don't want to interrupt, whatever.
It's all good.
No, it's fine. The thing is you're on our Thursday night show. You are a co-host on our Thursday night show. You can talk if you want to. It's okay.
I also want to say Hawk had a good comment. He said that if you're a good researcher, you don't cherry pick, and that's exactly what Jill and Brett have done. And I think you ladies have done the same thing, and you've brought it to the table like you're supposed to. I've been doing that for a long time. I know you guys have been doing that for a long time. Tex is doing that. BMR is doing that. Barton's doing that. It's what we're supposed to do. You don't just go, well, there was a Bigfoot encounter and there was some orbs involved, but we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to pretend like that part didn't happen and then just tell the Bigfoot encounter. And I know because I've listened to a really large Bigfoot podcast. He's very popular. He's the biggest one I know of anyway. And he had somebody on his show whose story I had told on my show. And I noticed that he left out like everything except for the physical encounter itself, which kind of when you cut it down to that bone, there's not a lot of meat there. It was just like a kind of a base encounter. And it was just kind of told. And I was like, wait a minute. And I knew exactly who that was. And I messaged her. And I was like, is this your encounter? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, that's not what you told me. And she's like, yeah, but he's not interested in, any of the other, I'm like, facts?
Right.
That's what he did. I mean, he cut out all the facts, and of course he's, it's his show. Who am I? I'm not going to argue with him. We have a mutual friend. I don't know him personally, but I have a mutual friend that's got a big show. We're good friends. And so I talked to him and I said, hey, why does he do that? And he's like, it's his thing. It's what he does. He just doesn't want the woo. They have that word, and it's like a dirty word that they've created to shame us, to shame on you for, wanting to talk about the whole enchilada instead of just picking out the, whatever that you think is, because they push a narrative. And a lot of them, I'm going to tell you the truth, folks, and I'm going to say this, and it may make people upset or uncomfortable, but a lot of it comes down to money. It's a money thing. They have a niche, and they want to fill that niche, and their audience is geared toward, that niche. But I like to believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I like to believe that I was one of the people that helped spearhead this new era, new movement that has kind of pierced the defensive heart of this, shield wall that they've put up, and said, hey, we're all going to close ranks and we're going to push you out because you're the woo. And that works really well, if the people that are standing next to you totally believe it, but there's a lot of people that are going along with it because they're like, hey, this is quote unquote the way to do things. Well, that is one way to do things, but it's also not a legit true way to do things, because you are literally cutting out entire swaths of story and encounters that are legit happened. And then you're really, it's really a form of lying is what it is. And you're slanting it to where everybody's encounter just looks like a cookie cutter. I saw a big hairy Chewbacca next to a tree.
Right.
That's it. Because that's all you have. If you take away all the other weirdness, then you just have Chewbacca walking around in the woods. And so you can only talk. And then there's a million of these smaller shows that splintered off. And what they've done is they're like, nobody's listening to us and the data. Well, nobody's listening to you. And they're like, but they're listening to these other people that are just entertainers. Because I say this, and I mean this with conviction. I say this, you have to be entertaining or nobody's going to watch. Nobody gives a crap, because if people didn't care about being entertained, then you would fill a stadium to watch a kid do a chemistry experiment in college. Instead, no, they go to watch Michigan and Ohio and they fill 100,000 people and to be entertained, because it's not fun to sit there and watch a kid do a chemistry experiment. So that's the thing. People just don't seem to grasp that. And they keep screaming about the data, and they could scream it until their ears bleed. It doesn't make anybody want to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And then they get mad at people like me because I'm bringing people's encounters to life. And they're like, oh, he's just a glorified storyteller. Why is nobody listening to me? Because you're boring as shit, dude. That's why. You're very boring. And nobody wants to look at charts and graphs. If they did, they would have voted for Ross Perot. That's all I'm saying. And that's my take on it. I mean, you can bore people to tears, and they're not going to care about your information or your data. Nobody gives a crap. And Jill, you make a documentary, 2 documentaries that were just awesome. And then I'm not going to mention names either, but you go to a conference and you're snubbed and people act weird or stupid, whatever, because you're not peddling the same BS that they are, because they have to have a show or whatever it is that goes on and on and on, and they don't find nothing. But hey, by all means, let's keep the BS train going. So yeah, you're going to get hate. You're going to get smacked around with all that hate because this old guard refuses to let go of their position. And instead of evolving and joining the rest of civilization with what is really science, the truth, if they really cared about the science, they would be looking at this other paranormal. There is an entire science behind ghosts and spirits and things like that. But they're like, it's the woo. It's the woo. You have to have no teeth and live in the woods, and and Bigfoot is a booger behind a tree. I'm just like, what is this? This is ridiculous.
Josh, I have to tell you, after we interviewed Dr. Simeon Hine for the sequel, it was it was an epic interview. And when we were done and we kind of packed up and we were driving back to the hotel, I almost felt sad, like kind of somber, like, well, there's the magic. He just explained it all. This is how the paranormal works. He just laid it out, and he pretty much did. And if you haven't had a chance to read Dark Matter Monsters by Dr. Simeon Hine, I highly recommend it. It really marries both worlds of
what's it called again?
Dark Matter Monsters. It has a Bigfoot on the cover.
That sounds like a good, because I spent some time on the phone a few months back with Ron Moorhead, and we were talking about the werewolf thing, and he was saying, look, everything is possible because it's all vibration. Mm-hmm. Now, there was a movie years ago called Wolfen, and it was about
that movie.
Yeah, it was freaky, right? But the Native Americans, they were kind of like trying to say it's all in the mind, but the mind, body, spirit connection is very powerful. And it is true. Everything is vibration. And I know that the late J.C. Johnson, who is a very good and close friend of a couple of my colleagues, one in particular lives close to me, David Weatherly, we're good friends, the author. And we've talked extensively about this. And I never got to talk to J.C. I've talked to some of his proteges, and they all say the same thing. But when he died, he believed in the shape-shifting phenomena wholeheartedly, 100%, because he spent time on the reservations, in particular the Navajo reservation, and he witnessed it. Like, he witnessed these people do these things, and it really is a vibration. And everything is a form of I don't know, how do you say it? Like it's energy. I forgot how Ron put it. I mean, if you're on that level, on that wavelength, you connect to it. It's like a radio frequency.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so when you catch that and you ride that wave, you see it, Of course, we are not geared towards that, but everybody's so terrified of it. You have like religious fanaticism that's terrified of it in one way. And that could be Christian, Muslim, whatever. It's always demon, 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 and which could be, but then you have this scientific community that's absolutely terrified of it too, because an atheistic belief would be turned on its ear if spirituality were to be true. And I tell people all the time, man, I'm telling you, there are people. This is why I believe, and I'll shut up. There was a guy who did security. Now, I own a security company, so you don't have to be a genius to be a security guard, depending on where you work. Now, if you work one of these big contracts, you got to be smart, some of these computer places. But I'm talking about this guy. He had a job as a night watchman for 30 years. He died. They did an autopsy to figure out what was wrong with the guy. He didn't have a brain. I'm not joking. This is a true thing. I can't remember the name of the guy. It was in Fate magazine, because I talked about it one day with Ron Murphy, I believe. It was either Ron Murphy or it was either him or Moorhead or one of them that was on there, David Weatherly. I talked about it a couple times. But the guy, he had a brain stem and the rest of his skull was filled with water.
Oh, wow.
You wonder how this guy, he had a wife, he had 2 children. He read the newspaper every day. He talked to people about politics. Now, he wasn't the brightest guy, and he didn't talk a whole lot. But how did his body function and all these things happen?
Right, yeah.
It powers you, not the brain, right? That's what's very important. People don't really get that. They don't understand it, and they don't want to understand it. And science will say the most ludicrous explanations for UFOs, like swamp gas and some of these crazy things they say. And you're like, their explanations are weirder and more stupid than what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
it's
then they say
razor. I mean, the easiest, most basic explanation is usually what it is.
Yeah, Occam's razor. Yeah, exactly. And there is this, like I said before, it's like the cult of ignorance. There is a cult in this country that has been bred since we were children. When I was a child, and this isn't bragging, whatever, but I was pretty smart. I was always one of the smartest kids in the class. And so the other kids would pick at me for being intelligent. It was like when in the 80s, it was like, you're a nerd. Now, this is before I grew up and became bigger and stronger, and I just was the same size as everybody else. I just looked like a kid, But the other kids would pick on me and mess with me, and they'd be like, "Oh, you think you're smart? Oh, the teacher likes you because you're smart, blah, blah, blah. Why are you always answering all the questions?" And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I was a genius in a past life. I don't know. Maybe you're just really stupid. I don't know. But then I had a smart mouth. When I did talk, I would say something rude to some kid, because they're idiots. And I hated listening to other kids read because they couldn't do it. And it pissed me off. Then I became a freshman in college, and I thought, well, we're past all that now. No. We would read aloud, and they would sit there and read like it was remedial, ninth grade high school.
Right.
And I realized they were just greasing people through, and it is to perform what they want to perform, which is it's part of the agenda, is keeping people stupid. And then if you are smart, then you got to dumb yourself down so you can fit in. And pop culture is all about stupidity and ignorance, because who the hell is going to think that it's normal to dress the way some of these people do? It's not. It is completely, they have the retardation. And so when you look at these people and you're like, why is his pants on the ground? What is this guy? Why don't you just carry your pants in your hand? I mean, it's the same thing. It's just walk around with your pants in your hand. I told this one guy that. He got off and he said, "What's up?" I said, "There ain't nothing up, dude. Your pants aren't, obviously." And I just kept going. But the bottom line is that's the ignorance, because we have fostered that, especially in this country. It's a cult of ignorance. And if you can make people stupid and make it not cool to be smart and not cool to learn, then that's what you get. Right. And you end up with this whole Bigfoot field that is nothing but a bunch of jackholes out there. Bigfoot running around the woods. There's Bigfoot's booger, blah, 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 behind a tree, blah, blah, blah. And that's all you get. So then somebody comes along like Brett and Jill, and they say, look, this is not what's happening. These people get mad. They're like, you don't believe in the baby Jesus because your Bigfoot should be, and it's like, it's not what they're saying. Right. They're just saying that there's more to this. I mean, read my book. Go ahead, read my book, Bigfoot, the Bigfoot phenomenon. Or read Barton's book. I mean, read any of these other people's books. Read Ron Moorhead's book or Josh Cutchin. They're all saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. Literally, this is what's happening. Now, Ron and me talked, and one of the things that Ron said, he echoed the same thing I said at the conference. It's always people start out believing that it's a physical being, and then they go to the other side. It's never the other way around. It's never somebody that comes out and says, well, I think they're all a spiritual manifestation. Oh, wait, no, they're all physical. Let's go back to it. Nobody does that. No. Nobody. Why is it always the other way? It's never that other way. And so that to me lends credence to this. And I think that everybody should go out and watch your show because it will get them a step closer to the truth. Yep. And like I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I did not start out as a flesh and blood or as a spiritual person. I thought that dog man I saw was a flesh and blood thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think it now. I'm telling you. Yeah. That's just my soapbox and whatever. Jill, continue. But that's it. I mean, that's what I believe. Yep.
No, I agree. And it is, I mean, like I said, we try to meet people where they are and just try to present it in a way that is easy to take in. We're gentle. Right.
Totally understand that, and like I said, Brandy and I, we were the same way, flesh and blood, just like Josh was in the beginning. And, we've totally changed that. And in fact, Tex actually named our Friday night shows Blondes and Booze and the Woo.
Exactly. And I get what you're saying, because the first encounter that I had was with Tex, and I can't tell you 100% that was flesh and blood. I'm still not sure to this day if that was flesh and blood. The second one I saw, I didn't see anything strange. It just looked like flesh and blood to me. But there's something about it, though, that just doesn't seem just flesh and blood. There is more to it. There is something else going on. And I think that the more people that talk about it, then we'll get the real truth out there.
Mm-hmm. We've also talked to, oh boy, here we go. So we've talked to people who are well known in the flesh and blood community, who've also shared privately that they've had experiences that fall under that paranormal umbrella. But again, it's like they're not going to go public with it. Right. And it piggybacks on what Josh was saying about, these are people who have audiences based on, their whole experience and encounter and what they're pushing and stuff. And some of these people have books to sell, but we're talking to more people than not who won't go on camera and privately are sharing like, well, yeah, I started hearing voices in my head and something wasn't right. And I know it was talking to me, but that's different. that wasn't the Bigfoot. That just happened during the Bigfoot encounter.
Right. Right.
Right. That, yeah. It's just like some of the Bigfoot organizations omit the paranormal side of the encounters. If it's just not about Bigfoot, then they're not going to put it in their reports.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And I don't think we're going to be any closer to the truth about anything if they keep leaving out key components in the reports. Because how are we supposed to know? It could connect to something somehow, but how are we to know if they're not giving us that information?
And one of the other things that we're grappling with is, okay, so in A Flash of Beauty, a lot of people say there's nothing beautiful about Bigfoot or these encounters. They're terrifying. You wouldn't know. You haven't seen one. We're really trying to portray the awe, the wonder, the mysteries of the universe. There's so much that we don't understand. And most of the people we did talk to, though, even though it was a scary encounter, there was this sense of wonder and this kind of awe, of this creation and just what else is out there in the world. However, there are also the reports that we've received and the interviews we've done that are not as beautiful, I guess you could say, that heed more warning about being cautious about being in the woods because it is an apex predator. It's bigger than us. It's smarter, faster. God knows it's stronger. And it's just a matter of trying to figure out, okay, so what's the most responsible way to share that information without sensationalizing it, without, just going crazy and being one-sided. So that's something that's kind of been on the back burner with some of the reports and stories and people we've talked to is what are the next steps and how do we present that information? Because I think Ron Moorhead said it in his interview with us, like, you gotta be careful because they're not all out serving cupcakes in the woods.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of people are friendly with them and gift them and, befriend them. And I just think it's my own opinion, so don't come at me, people, but I don't think they're just this friendly creature out there. I don't at all.
Well, I think they'll have a tendency to get a little bit mad if you don't keep sending them gifts, that's.
Well, not only that, but I think, somebody said it in chat, by leaving out all of these, the truth in these reports, that puts people at risk too.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Woods and things like that. It's not right.
One of the witnesses that we had, that was talking to me on that particular show that I mentioned. I'm not going to say the name of it, but there's a guy on there. We'll call him Ho-Ho. Ho-Ho told my witness, and I believe she talked about it on our show too, that it was okay for her grandson to go down to the river. And this happened in Washington, actually, the Washington-Oregon border. And it was perfectly fine for her grandson to go down there and play by the river with the forest people because they won't hurt you.
Yeah, no.
And I got pretty aggravated with Ho-Ho and with, whatever, the other guy, Dinero Maker. I was really aggravated with those guys because, and then it was a little, whatever. But I'm like, dude, that's really not correct. It's fun to pretend, and that's what movies are for and TV shows and, to pretend. Mm-hmm. But, they're doing the world a disservice when they go around saying things like that. Absolutely. Because that, I tend to believe that they are responsible for some of the mishaps in the woods. I'm not saying it's all them because it's not. There's a lot of other really unstable phenomena out there that's there.
Yeah, there's other things in the woods that you need to be aware of. So,
yeah.
And I start thinking about that. We had a discussion about this the other night. about other things to worry about in the woods. And the thing that terrifies me the most is the human aspect in the woods. That's what terrifies me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Feral people too is actually a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, they make these movies like Wrong Turn, but when I was a kid, my dad's friends, they owned that, and me and Garetano, we've talked about this, I think, with you guys, and Eric Palacios too, because Eric Palacios, the filmmaker, the Brushy Creek, whatever, his aunt owned that house at one time, the Chainsaw Massacre house, and Garetano wrote a book about the filming of it. With he knew all the people, he knew Tobe, everybody. What's crazy though is my dad, back when that house was, La Frontera is a big shopping center now. It's everybody, there's people everywhere. But there was a bunch of backwoods people that didn't live far from that house, and my dad's friend lived in that house at that time. And he said there are some real, actual weird people that live behind there. And when I was a kid living out in Rockdale, our neighbors, I'm pretty sure that they were a husband. They were the husband. There was, let's say, a husband. There were two brothers and a sister, and I think one of the brothers was like with her. You know what I mean? Like in that way. And so it did exist. It does happen. And one of their children was really weird. And I've actually talked about this on the show too. And he would sit outside with a hatchet and just bang it onto trees all day long.
Wow.
And, I mean, he was odd to say the least, but, I was 11 years old, walked around the woods with a gun. I know that's a young age for most people, but I was raised out in the country when I was 15. And so I was walking through the property one time, through our property, and he was out there, with his slack-jawed self, like, and he was hitting the tree, and I was like, whoa. And I had like a 22 snake charmer, and I was like, I literally was 11 years old, and I was contemplating, okay, am I going to have to shoot this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have to defend myself against another person, but this he's nuts. And I think he was the product of inbreeding. And so I literally had to sit there and just kind of walk by him, and I was like, hey, what's up, man? And kind of be nice. And he stopped, and he was just like, just looking at me, watching me.
Scary. Yeah.
And it happened another time with my friend Keith, and we ran into him, and he was out there with his hatchet doing what he did. And at any time, I mean, what if he just decided, you know what, I'm going to attack you? We're in the middle of the woods. You can scream all you want. But luckily we had guns, and I think he had a healthy fear of it, because he looked down at our guns and looked up at us. And I kind of thought he was contemplating doing something, but he knew what that gun was, what it would do. Not much smarter than a Bigfoot. I mean, to me, and there is a human aspect to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, there's some people that live out in these woods here in Austin that the rumors are there that they eat they're cannibals, they eat people.
You ever see the movie The Hills Have Eyes?
Yeah. I mean, those are funny shows, like The Wrong Turn and all that. They're kind of a tongue-in-cheek, funny, but not really. I mean, there's people like that.
Right.
The human aspect, like you said, is a scary thing. You don't know what's in those woods. And especially if you're a female, I don't know. I was eating dinner with my mortgage broker the other day, and he made a comment that I've thought about before. He's like, we're big dudes. He's a big African-American dude, right? We're sitting there and we're eating. He goes, I go outside. Ain't nobody going to mug me. He's a big dude. I'm a big dude. He's like, we can walk to our car, and chances are they're going to pick an easier target. He's like, but imagine being a woman. We're a couple of women. We walk out, you could eat. Dude, women are targets. Mm-hmm. And I see it all the time in my company. I mean, a woman, that's who they're going to go after. And if you're a beautiful woman, you're even more of a target. And there's no telling. You hear horror stories all the time of women getting abducted, of things happening. So this researching out in the woods thing is a gamble. You got to be real careful. And I'm not telling women that you can't take care of yourself or anything like that, but I would definitely be armed, and I would take some people with me. I would never go out there by yourself. And even Lyle Blackburn, he told me he likes to go out and do solo, and go out to the woods out there in Arkansas. What's it called? Falk.
Yeah.
And I told Lyle, I said, you're not a big guy, and even me as a big dude, I'm 6'4", 370. I said, I would be apprehensive to be walking around out in the woods out there. And he did see something one time. And I told him, I just asked him, I wasn't being snarky, but I said, Lyle, you're a good friend of mine. What happens if you run into something? Do you have a plan? You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a scary thing, and you don't, you know, not only are there hogs and coyotes and all kinds of things out there, alligators. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It's not the zoo, right? It's not the zoo, and so I would be terrified. I'm going to throw this out there too, Jill, and I don't know what you think of this, but there is another phenomenon out there that I believe is quite prevalent, in particular in the Northwest, and I hear about it a lot, and that is the pale crawlers. Do you ever pick up any information about that? Like, do you ever hear anything?
Like the Fresno crawlers?
Well, Fresno crawlers are a little different in the way that they don't have arms. At least people told me, but these
are you talking about like the white,
like the rake,
the spindly things? You know what?
Yeah.
So when I first started going out, when we were interviewing Tara, I went out with her to the woods a couple times where they were doing clearings. So just a recap. So Tara Hara, she's a psychic medium. She does clearings up above, like where the Owl Moon Lab is, where Daryl and Tobe had their site. I'm trying to think of how to explain this. So it's BLM land, but there's also a lot of logging going on. Mm-hmm. And it used to be where I think Calapoola Indians were, but they go up there and do land clearings and whatnot. And they were talking about something very similar to that, kind of these white, spindly, weird, and she compared it to the rake type things that are in the woods, and perhaps a little bit more easy. They could see them. They were aware of them, whether it was in their mind's eye or physical in the flesh. But she talked about that, especially in that area. As far as reports from other people, no, we have been hearing more dogman reports. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it's a situation where now my network of people I talk to about cryptids has grown. So now I'm hearing more about it, because usually we don't hear much about it here in the Pacific Northwest. But,
about dogmen, you don't?
You know, we'll hear a handful of reportings, but not like what's going on in the South or like in the East and whatnot.
Interesting. What do you think a dogman is? Under the bus.
Okay. There you go.
I don't know, but I'll tell you what. So when we first started, before we got the idea just to focus on the 3 paranormal elements for the documentary, one of our first ideas was we were going to go cross country from Santa Cruz, California, all along kind of like the 35th parallel to Virginia Beach or Virginia City. Virginia Beach on the East Coast, because there's been reports of a lot of activity, whether it's UFO, paranormal, cryptid, happens kind of in this area that cuts through the U.S. And I went through. I have the map downstairs at my other desk, but a map where we put little pins around all the sightings and all the encounters and reports, and we were just going to kind of thread the needle. And I remember going through the map, looking at, like, pointing stuff out to Brett. I was like, oh yeah, and then the Dogman stuff. And he's like, Dogman? What's Dogman? And I started I started recounting everything I'd heard on Paranormal Roundtable, because that was my reference point for this. And Brett said, Jill, we need to get people on board with Bigfoot first, and then we can do Dogman. And he told me, he said, if these documentaries are a success, we can do a Dogman documentary. And we've been approached twice, but the timing has been kind of wonky. So I'm going to hold him to it. that
Awesome.
we get to do it. But I just remember he's like, what the hell's a dog man?
Mhm.
And as the more I tried to explain it, the more ridiculous it sounded coming out of my mouth.
Hmm.
And for him, it's like, I get it. I totally, again, it's like meeting people where they are. But now I think I'm in a place where I've met enough people and have enough resources I can put it together. So,
Well, you're kind of like, well, how am I supposed to explain Bigfoot? It's a big, hairy thing that's neither man nor monkey. What?
Yeah.
It just sounds ridiculous as you say it. But then again, it's real. So you're sitting there going, how do you explain it without sounding that way? So I get what you're saying there. But my question to you is, do you think that, as somebody asked me this question before, it's like, do you think because you're female that you would more likely have a Bigfoot encounter?
I think so. I think, how do I put this? I think women, and I don't want to sound like we all have these roles that we play in society, but I think women are more attuned to paying attention because we're, as mothers, having to be aware of anything that could harm a child. Just that it's a different sense of awareness that I think women have out in the woods that men don't.
Right.
And I'm not saying that men don't have the ability to have the sensory perception to be aware of Bigfoot, but I'm just saying that I think women in our DNA, our hardwiring is a little bit different to be aware. And I also think maybe we're less threatening
Right.
out in the woods.
Yeah.
We're a little bit more approachable.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier about the the baby crying, and that kind of brings me, like what we're talking about. When you hear that, do you think? My thinking is like it's something trying to maybe lure a female away, because you only hear about it from females. You know what I'm saying?
That, yeah, I agree. I absolutely, because I remember, Brett and Mike, they heard it too, and they're just like, whoa, that's weird. But they weren't moving in the direction that, that innate, like, must rescue, sense. Yeah. And I also think it's important. You have to rule out what's in the woods and what things sound like. When, let's see here, gosh, about maybe 5-6 years ago, at the old house that Brett and I lived at, it was right by a creek. And I was walking to the little shopping center, going over a little bit of bridge where there's a culvert. And I heard, I would swear that it was a baby crying. And I started going into like panic mode. I'm like, someone threw a baby in the culvert. Oh my God. Like, how do I get down there? They were baby beavers. And if you have never heard a baby beaver, Google what it sounds like. It sounds like a human baby crying. So, but I can guarantee you that day that we heard that mimic going on, there was nothing else out there. And you could feel it. It's just that weird, like someone flipped a switch. It was almost like an oppressive, just like you're in a vacuum. Something was off. The energy changed. The energy, yeah.
Wow.
That's very amazing, though. That's amazing. It's like you can feel the difference. You can actually feel the difference.
Absolutely. And I grew up in a house that had a lot of paranormal activity. It was haunted. And that kind of followed me. It still follows me, but I remember growing up, like, you knew like when something was going to happen. And you hear that from other people around hauntings. It's like, oh, it is just like a heavy, wet blanket being tossed over you. And just, like either something's going to move, you're going to see something, or the walls are going to start scratching. But it's that same feeling out in the woods. And that, just to circle back to Dr. Simeon Hines' book, Dark Matter Monsters, he kind of lays out all the similarities and the connections between what investigators find doing like ghost investigations, like with the batteries draining,
Right.
electrical issues. The same thing with cryptid sightings.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
It's all connected.
I wholeheartedly believe it is. Wholeheartedly. Add some UFO in there too. It's all,
Yeah.
For sure.
I think it's a mistake though that people are making when they say what Brett said, and I'm not trying to be, rude or whatever, but I think he was wrong. And our audience, we have quite a bit of people, not just on the YouTube, but on the podcast too. If you take everybody together, we have a lot of listeners, and there's a lot of people who send in stories and send in encounters, and to the point where sometimes people get offended because I haven't gotten to their story and it's been, a while. But it depends on what the topic is. And I don't think that you were wrong in trying to convince him to talk about Dogman, but I'm not into the whole, like, I believe in doing a show an hour, 2 hours on something, but I really think that it's all they're really, if you get down to the true brass tacks, there aren't a lot of stories out there that are just basic Dogman Bigfoot, because there's other stuff going on that's either right around the same time that it happens or before or after. I used to think there was all this, just people saw a Dogman, that was it. And then I started realizing the Bigfoot witnesses too, a lot of them had a lot of paranormal stuff happening. Most of them have seen a ghost too. I think that a lot of being able to see this they have a second sight. I've said this before in Spanish, it's ojo dotado. That's what it is, the gift. But in the Mexican culture, actually Cuban, Latino, it doesn't matter, whatever, that's what they say. It's like a gift. And Patrica is like a curse, right? But it can be both. You see this and you don't want to see it. But a lot of these people, they have the ability to see, like second sight. And they'll see a Bigfoot because they're on that particular wavelength. And I'm telling you, I think it's a mistake that people make. They think, well, let's just do this one subject, and that's fine. You'll get an audience that's geared toward Bigfoot. But right now it was strike while the iron's hot, because and to me, it's only going to get hotter, honestly. And I think that what's going to happen is the door has been kicked open now by a handful of people, and there is room for people in their minds to understand that this is all connected. And I think that we kind of, in a way, do a disservice to the community and to ourselves when we limit ourselves. Because look at Seth Breedlove, for example. He's I was talking to him the other day. Seth is a guy that he's been doing the Dogman thing, and he's rode it to the finish line. Like, a lot of people like his work. They like what he's doing. And I think that there again, you're talking about Dogman. What I would prefer to see is people go to certain areas and just do the stories of that particular area, much like a ghost researcher, because a ghost researcher is more open to whatever is coming at them, And I do really think that the ghost researchers and the UFO researchers are light years ahead of what these cryptid researchers are. And not to bash the cryptid community, but the cryptid community is like living in the dark ages. It's like this. It's the same booger behind a tree mentality that keeps me from wanting to go to a Bigfoot conference. I just not interested at all. I went to a couple of them, and I was bored out of my mind. And I would have rather, went and gargled Drano than sat there for another hour listening to some idiot talk about a booger behind a tree. And I was just like, dude, I'm so sick of this crap and these people. And I'm honest about it. I'm honest. I'm not interested. But that's one person's opinion, right? But then the proof is in the pudding. I mean, this is not smack talking. This is the truth. I went on last night. There was 60 people or something in the chat, and it was almost midnight. I mean, wow. People show up to hear what these people are seeing and what they're saying that they saw. I don't think that it's going to be if we just keep doing the same old tired stuff. But you didn't do that, Jill. You and Brett didn't do that. You did the woo, and as you can see, it's paying dividends. I don't mean money wise, but I mean people watching because they're tired of the same bullcrap. The Bigfoot community is tired and old and needs to retire. It's had 67, 70? How many years? To do something, and you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
You got these people running around out in the woods, finding nothing and thinking that there's some hot shit. You're not. Sorry for my language, but that's the truth. They're not. And people are going to get tired of that. And it's like, with about the same token, you got the guy that takes his shirt off and screams at the ghosts, whatever. How many people can watch a rerun of that crap? I mean, I would just play Russian roulette in the dark by myself before I watch a rerun of that. I can't do it. I mean, I tried the other day. It was on TV, and I was like, I couldn't watch one episode, much less like a repeat. I was like, this is horrible. Like, this is a way to waste your life. This should be like a torture in Guantanamo. I mean, for real. It's like waterboarding. They're like, no, please, no. I tell you anything. Don't make me watch the finding of the foot. Please. They're gonna ask. You know what I mean? Like, they don't find anything, please. I could see them really just giving you whatever information that you needed because they don't want to watch it. They don't want to watch Spirit Adventures again and this dude screaming at ghosts. And it's horrible. It's horrible. And it's become so cookie cutter, cut out, whatever. But Dogman, if you looked at the conference, and you two ladies at the top, y'all were at the conference, the proof is in the pudding. The first conference had 400 something. The second conference had 600 something. I mean, you had a bunch of people there over 3 days, and everybody was there for 3 days.
Yes.
Nobody left. Everybody was holding their collective breath. And I saw David and I saw Ken waiting to tell me, hey, I told you so on a Sunday. And Chad Lewis came to me on Sunday afternoon. He says, I can't believe this is unbelievable. He said, Chad Lewis, this is unprecedented. I have not been to a conference where Sunday was packed like that when it was a cryptid-based conference. And, I don't know how it is with just the paranormal conferences or the UFO conferences. I'm sure they're huge. They got these big whatever. But, for somebody to put on that conference, and you had to have big cojones, first of all, to do what we did, because everybody said it couldn't be done. But I'm telling you, the audience is there. They are hungry. They want to hear this. They want to know this. So to limit yourself, and please tell Brett, and if he's not listening, full steam ahead. If he wants help with a Dogman documentary, you want to make something happen, let's talk, because I'm ready to go. And, and I'm going to say something else, and I'm not bagging on anybody, but I'm really sick and tired of the cookie cutter people walking through the woods looking concerned, and then you interview them and they're like, and the person interviewing them was like, oh, yeah, oh, and it smelled bad. It was big and hairy. Yeah, and then they're like, yeah, hiding behind a tree, yeah. And I'm like, I'm just so tired of that.
Right.
Because that's not what people are telling us. So why are they only telling you this? Because they're afraid that the audience will run away and go, oh, that's too crazy, man.
Right.
Change your audience. Change your audience, because the audience needs to be changed like the diapers need to be changed. I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. And so people say, well, you're real quick to throw people out or ban them or whatever you got to do, whatever. And I said, I don't need those people, because those are not the people that I'm going to be talking to. I'm talking to the open-minded people who want to learn, who have an IQ above a tomato. Those are the people that I want to talk to. And I'm sorry if these people can't keep up. If you can't keep up, get off the boat. Go back to shore.
Right.
Take the dinghy and go. We don't need you on the boat because you're not helping. They're not. And they keep pandering to the same audience. And some of my friends, like Jill said, they're in the Bigfoot community. And they'll be like, yeah, like they're telling you a dirty secret. A ghost. And I'm like, yeah, you saw a ghost. So have I. They're like, yeah, that's why I'm telling you. Don't tell anybody, though, because I don't want my audience thinking I'm crazy like you. And I'm like, really? Because I'm actually doing better than you.
Right.
They seem to forget that point right there. I'm like, you could be doing what I'm doing, but you're actually doing what you're doing and it's not working anymore. So maybe you should change what you're doing. And I get kind of offended when people tell me, you know, they talk to me like they're trying to tell me I saw a UFO or a ghost, you know, and it's like, why are you telling me this? You know, why don't you tell your audience this? Because they want to know. They're ready to hear it. Oh, well, then I would lose all the old, you know, people that live in the woods type people. You know, I would lose all that. Who cares?
Right.
They need to join the rest of us with what's happening.
I think they'd embrace that. I mean, not just because you have to imagine in their audience, there's other people who are afraid to come forward, you know, and think about all the other people who have come forward and stuck their necks out. You know, it's what we're trying to right here. The paranormal is normal. We're trying to normalize the conversation, remove the stigma. Let's talk about this. You know, it's like Dr. Michael Adams in our first film. I mean, the fact that he went on camera at all to talk about this was a big deal. This is a guy, Yale educated. He's had radio shows. He's a pretty well-known guy. He's out in Florida, up and down the East Coast. But he's like, you know, for the people who are going out and sticking their necks out there, they need to be celebrated. They're like the pioneers. They're the trailblazers who are taking the risk of ridicule and being mocked to kind of kick the door in, to let people know what's going on. And I also think the respect level, well, wait, let me walk that back. I think for some people, the respect level would go up if they stepped up and were honest about their experiences.
Yeah. And, you know, when you're talking about that, though, that is the compartmentalization that has taken place. I have, you know, I at Paranormal Roundtable and my colleagues that are my friends and my allies, my co-hosts, everybody, we have taken an enormous amount of pressure from these different compartmentalized groups telling me, you know, well, why don't you stay in your lane? One particular UFO researcher kind of came at me sideways last year, and I told him, I said, what is my lane? Right. And he goes, well, I don't know. You're all over the place. I said, that's called Fordian research. It's a real thing. And I was like, and I'm doing my job. You must be the other guy. I don't know you to come at me like that, you know, to kind of give me, he was talking down to me like, let me give you some advice, kid, you know, and I'm like, I'm 46 at that time. And I'm like, you've been doing this 20 years longer than me and you still haven't accomplished anything. Right. And I told him, I said, you know, my wheelhouse, because he said something about my wheelhouse being Dogman. And then they made some kind of joke. It was in a group, and they said, oh, yeah, the doghouse. Oh, and they were kind of making snarky remarks. And I'm like, dude, I'm so used to the Bigfoot community having the retardation. I don't care. I'm used to it. I just said, go ahead, say whatever you want to say. So then I just made a snarky comment back. I said, how many people show up to listen to you on a Sunday? He goes, well, I don't have a show. I said, exactly. You don't have anything. So why are you chapping at me? I mean, you know. Right. Clap somewhere else, dude. And you know, and then I had the Bigfoot groups. They've kicked me out of a couple of them because I dared to say that what this person was describing to a T was a dog man. And they were like, oh, the Bigfoot, this is big feet. You know, the dog man is down the hall. Go there. Yep. And I'm like, well, you know, keep living in the dark ages and, you know, people will just keep flocking to my show and it's going to happen. They're going to come to Blondes and Booze. They're going to go to Tex and BMR. They're going to go to Jill's thing, and they're going to go to my thing. They're going to do whatever, and they don't care anymore because they're sick and tired of the same old runaround.
Once again, you know, we all know people who are strictly flesh and blood, and numbers don't lie. Yeah. Look at their numbers. Look at their numbers in chat. Numbers don't lie. That's it.
Yeah. And I'm going to make a bold prediction. And there are people. Now, somebody the other day, they were saying, Josh Turner, he's a narcissist. And he has the classic, what do you call it? The characteristics of a narcissist. I said, one of the biggest characteristics of a narcissist is someone who talks a big game to fool you, and then they don't do or follow through with what they say. I said, so that right there, the biggest red flag is gone because I talk a big game, but I back it up. I've always been that way because I look at this. I read a book years ago and I talked about this. It was Cortez and the Downfall of the Aztec Empire. I read it on a plane going from here to Vegas. Actually, I read it. But I enjoyed that plane ride because the book was so interesting and I had a couple rum and cokes and I was feeling good. I got off the plane ready to gamble, right? So I thought about it though, and I thought, this guy, what he did, whether you believe it's right, wrong, or indifferent, he burned the ships because he had a warrant out for him from Cuba, for the governor, because he took 4 ships that he wasn't supposed to because they were going to arrest him, send him back to Spain. He was like, I can't do that. It's all or nothing for me. So when he gets to the coast, the first thing that they stepped off the ships and started fighting the Tabascans because they were on the coast, right? I'll tell you what this has to do with it, right? So the ships, he burns the ships. And then during the siege of Tenochtitlan, one of his lieutenants gets all snarky. And he's like, if you hadn't burned the ships, we wouldn't be here having hearts and heads, literally having hearts and heads and our horses' heads thrown at us by these savages. And he gets upset with him. So he ends up trying to discipline this guy, but the guy pulled out a blade on him. Cortez kills him. Then he says, you know what? Take him in pieces and throw them at the Aztecs.
Yeah.
And he stands up on the top of one of their temples, or their ziggurats, and he says, if I will do that to one of my guys, imagine what I'll do to you. It's going to be a long night. And that so terrified them that at one point they were on the bridge, and that allowed their Tlaxcalan allies to come up out of the water and catch them by surprise and knock a bunch of them into the water and get this. A lot of them drowned because, believe it or not, even though they built a city on top, or they lived on a city on top of a lake, a lot of them couldn't swim. So, yeah. And so when I was reading all this, I'm thinking, man, this is crazy because what happens, fortune favors the bold. And if you have the cojones to cross the Rubicon and be Caesar, I mean, hell, they're already calling you that anyway. They're calling you a dictator, a despot, all these horrible things, whatever. What does it matter? You might as well go forward and do what you got to do. They're not going to like you any more than, why pander to people that don't like you? It doesn't matter. You're not going to, why try to win them over when you already have an audience?
Right.
That's why I don't believe in hey, let's just do Bigfoot and let's get it, and then let's go into this, whatever. That might work, yeah. But unless you're willing to go out there and grab that brass ring and just hold on to it, you're not going to know how much you can accomplish and what you can really achieve. Bigfoot has been done over and over and over again. Now, I will say this, Jill, you guys made a video that's good. It stands out from others, right? But move forward into, and I'm saying this on the show, I'm saying move forward into that new frontier. There's more out there.
Oh,
let's
absolutely.
talk about these other things. Let's talk about the crawlers in these areas. Go to Devil's Backbone. Go to Land Between the Lakes. Go to all these different places and talk about all the weird stuff that's out there and interview people who've seen ghosts, who've seen Bigfoot, Dogman. They're all in the same vicinity of these places. I mean, that's what I believe. And I believe that's, I paint myself into that corner all the time so that I have to deliver, because I learned that lesson when I read that book by John Manship White. It's a really good book, Cortez and the Downfall of the Aztec Empire, because it tells you exactly what happened, how it happened, and why. And when you sit there and you're on the edge of what is historically happening, and you're going to go out there and put yourself out there. Yes, you will get attacked. You will be messed with. You will be harassed like nobody's business. But the reward is huge, because if it was easy, everybody be doing it. Everybody would be doing it. Years ago, I used to work out, and I would do a few unorthodox things, and I would have these big guys in there, and they'd be looking and snickering, laughing, whatever. Guess what? I'm stronger than they are, and they're all juiced up. And now they don't even have any testosterone, and I'm still bigger, stronger than they are, and always will be, because they did something that was, hey, quote unquote, the way to do things. I did something different that was unorthodox. I created a system, that anybody can tailor to themselves. And once you use that, it's tried and true. I've done it for years and years and years. It works, and it minimizes injury, and you grow. I mean, it's a way to push beyond your boundaries. And until you're doing that and you're willing to do that, well, guess what? You're just going to be stuck in doing whatever. And yes, there is a way to make it with this same merry-go-round of whatever that they're doing, but it's small time. It's little stuff, right? It's the little stuff. You're not going to get the big audience. You're not going to get to the big time if you just, and people would tell me, well, you retold an encounter that sounds unbelievable. I'm like, that's not my problem. That is not my problem. That person told me that encounter. They encountered it. Is it true? Right. It's their truth. They say it's true. Mm-hmm. That's up to you, the audience, to discern whether you believe it or not. Okay, right. But it ain't no fake. It's no AI generated. It's a person's. This is what they believe. And when somebody comes on the show, they can tell you who knows what, right? All we're doing is relaying the information, but don't censor the information. Let it all come out and take all of their experiences and all of their encounters and let people make their own decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right now. A lot of times. Right now, our focus is, oh my gosh, we have to finish Ron Moorhead's documentary. We've been working on it for over a year now on the Sierra Sounds. And we're hoping to have that wrapped up filming by end of August, I'm thinking, maybe September. So once we get that off of our plate, then we can jump to the next thing. But
Are you going to include some of his theories on quantum physics?
For this one, we're really focusing on the Sierra Sounds and the history behind them. And
they're amazing, yeah.
And analysis and whatnot. We'll touch on it, but it's not. I mean, the quantum Bigfoot could be its own.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's another flesh and blood guy that kind of turned his thinking around for sure. Yeah, it's amazing talking to him. So I can just imagine how much fun you're having doing this with him. So
yeah, nicest guy. Just a real genuine, it's been a real treat. It's always fun to catch up with him and stuff. So I'll actually be seeing him next month at Beachfoot. So
that's nice. Unfortunately, I can't make it this year. I'm kind of sad, but I hope you all have fun. It sounds like a great time.
Yeah. It's my birthday weekend that it's
taking. Oh my
place,
goodness! So. Well, happy early birthday.
Yeah.
Now, do you know what your next documentary is going to be about? Have you thought about that yet?
Outside of Ron's, well, like I mentioned, I don't know how much I can say. Just
okay,
yet.
Then I won't ask. We don't want to give away anything. So
but I will say, I mean, we are working on another documentary. So we do have our day jobs. Brett and I, we're full-time filmmakers. My background's more screenwriting and writing. So I have like my commercial writing projects. And we're also working on a documentary right now. Totally not cryptid or paranormal. It's about the mouth of the Columbia River in the jetty restoration that's going on right now.
Wow. Okay.
Columbia River, the mouth of the Columbia, it's also known as the graveyard of the Pacific. It's like the most dangerous bar in the world to cross. So we're working on that. Not paranormal, but still.
Very interesting, though. Very interesting. Yeah, I love watching all kinds of documentaries. I'm telling you, like anything that has to do with history or just any of that stuff is just fascinating to me. So I envy you having that type of job.
Some days are easier than others.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I hear you. You do have a quick question, if you don't mind answering, Jill. And this was back, been back a little ways ago. It's this Jill question. When you looked at the tree line to see who was throwing rocks with you, did you look at the tops of the trees? Several people had asked that question to you.
So it wasn't, to describe where the abandoned dump was, the trees, it was almost like the trees, they're like Douglas firs, and they could not have been higher than 8 or 9 feet. So it was like new growth, like reforestation.
Right.
And what I speculate, my theory is that it was juveniles amongst, playing in the tree line. Coincidentally, just on that note, around the abandoned dump, a lot of people were having sightings of the Bigfoots running across the highway and just in the trees in general. The county has cleared all those trees surrounding the dump. And Stan Avery, who in the first film, the plumber with the beard, the Bigfoot,
the braid. Yeah.
He went, he was CCing me on his like email campaign to like county commissioners and whatnot, like, tell us the truth about the trees. Why did you cut them down? And their response was like, well, we were afraid of people coming in to steal scrap metal and whatnot. And it just didn't add up. Like the reasoning, and I should go back and find the email, but yes, so I digress. The trees were rather short, so there was no possibility of them being like up in the trees or anything like that.
Right. Well, and you said it was a fir type tree. Aren't those like soft woods anyway, and like real bendable? Like
these are like Christmas trees, basically. Yeah.
So I couldn't see a 600-pound Sasquatch sitting in one of those.
No, but they're thick enough. The spacing in, I speculate, I don't want to say it was like a Christmas tree farm, for tax purposes or whatnot. But yeah, the trees were planted close enough that something you could disappear quickly if you wanted to. But I speculate it was juvenile activity.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Have you yourself seen any orbs or anything like that out in the woods?
Yes. Brett and I were filming along the Columbia River, and it was something totally unrelated. It was just before the sun came up. He was filming. He does a lot of work for the ports, and like sometimes a ship will be coming in, and he has to be on call to go film it. And so we were on this beach near a wooded area, and he kept looking over. He's like, I'm just watching this red light kind of bop around in the woods. We're like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what it is. There's nothing out there. And then as soon as you mention it, it disappears. So I would have to, as far as orb, we'll wait. Okay, so not in the woods, but after spending time at Tobe and Daryl's habituation spot, we came back. We actually brought back some vine maple that had been knotted. And did something come with us? I don't know. But we were talking about just weird things happening. And Brett looked up and he said, Jill. And I looked up and we both watched this brownish gray orb just kind of bop through our kitchen.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And then it disappeared. And we're like, okay, that happened. So we've had interesting things happen in the home. The only other thing orb-like that really comes to mind is we were filming at Mount Adams, which is like where East Seti Ranch is, and just a lot of activity. It's like adjacent to the Yakima Reservation that Mel Skahan talks about in both our documentaries. And we're up there. We're actually filming I believe, summer of 2020 when the comet was going. There was like a comet or something going through. And we were filming that, or went to get photos. And off in the horizon, I'm watching this light, really unusual light. And I'm thinking, God, that's a weird plane. Well, it's not a helicopter. And I'm just watching it for a few minutes. And I call Brett over. I'm like, what is that? It's not a plane. It's not. He's like, well, it's not a drone. And then we're like, it's a UFO. We're watching a UFO. And he's like, why am I not filming this? And
Right.
as soon as we acknowledged it, poof, it went away.
In a way. Yeah.
Yep.
And I've heard that I've heard people, actually somebody in chat that's in chat, our friend Greg, he had like almost like a conversation with orbs in the woods. And when I say conversation, like it hung around and, you know, did things he asked. So I find that interesting as well.
Interesting. And Ashley Stinnett talks about that in our sequel too. When she was out on an expedition and she saw the orb and she was just thinking like, oh, wow, you are so beautiful. This is so beautiful. And then it started coming towards her. It's just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it turned around.
So there's some sort of intelligence, you know, it's what it sounds like.
Something's going on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Brandy, you have any questions for Jill?
Actually, I don't. She's pretty much answered them right along the way. I was like, okay, forget it. Okay, forget it. She's very thorough when she answers a question. You do, and I was like, what the heck? Okay, well, I'll just shut my mouth over here. You know, I just have to say is I do envy what you do, just because I find it all fascinating. Everything, you know, even from the Bigfoot to the historical type things that you're doing, and it's just amazing, and you're an amazing person. I just want to let you know that.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely, and we're fans.
We're fans.
For sure. Josh, do you have anything?
Mm-mm. Not much. I've already said enough. I don't want to say too much. I just, you know,
It's all good here.
I think I'm going to have to, you know, with the show, I just, you know, with everything I've been doing lately and just, I'm dealing with a lot, you know, and so I'm just not always, you know, able to focus like I'd like.
Yeah.
You know, I got a million things going on in my mind and a million things going on in my life, you know, and I don't want to be a person who can't contribute, you know what I mean? But I don't want to overstep my bounds either. So that being said, I think next week, probably starting next week, I'm not going to be on the show on Thursdays. So it's nothing against anybody or anything. I just got a lot to deal with. I got a lot going on, and so I wanted to say that. And it's been nice. I've had a good time. I enjoy being on Blondes and Booze. But I think that you guys are you got this. I mean, you know, and I think that I hope everybody continues to come to Blondes and Booze and to hang out, whatever.
Well, just know you're welcome anytime.
Just pop in.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, I don't mind if somebody throws me a link every now and then. I'll show up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and I don't know. I don't even know what I'm going to do in the future either. You know, it's like I have a nice audience, everybody, but there is a such thing as burnout too.
Yes.
And I think that I'm starting to get to the point where, you know, you know, and when you're doing what we're doing, you know, it's like Joe was saying, you know, you're kind of like you're pioneering, you know, you're going into this new frontier of just, you know, pushing the boundaries and talking about things that people didn't want to talk about, you know. And there were people who gave me stories like of these vampire type creatures, and they couldn't get anyone else to take them. Because, you know, everybody's like, well, I don't want to sound crazy. You know, somebody had to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, the one that you talked about last night, I didn't get to watch it last night, but I did today at work. And holy cow, like I was thinking like the brother and like, how could someone do that to their family? And just, you know.
That's the thing that stood out to me. The guy's name was Trevor, and his brother was a jerk. And when he was telling me the story, I kept thinking, this sounds like very familiar, you know, because I don't know how many people relate to that, but I can relate to it. I can relate to somebody who's sort of sociopathic. This is what they do, you know? Right. And so anyways, I wanted to say it. I didn't want to take anything away from you, Jill, or anything, but I wanted to announce it. I won't be on the show next week, and I don't know. I might come back after a couple of weeks and I can recharge my battery, but I have a lot of work to do. And it's nothing personal. I love the Blondes and Booze, and I wish you guys the best. And
thank you.
But it seems like going, and this is why I don't do a lot of other people's shows. There's always somebody in the chat that they don't like you. You're not their cup of tea or whatever. And it's like, it's not, I don't want you guys to feel like you have to tell them to be quiet or something, And so it's much easier for me and less stressful if I just have my own whatever, and I don't have to worry about somebody's audience being, whatever. Because you're on your own show. You mess up your show, you mess up your show. You want to mess up somebody else's show, you got to answer for that, And so, I told Tex that. He wanted me to come on Monday. They got something going on, and I don't think I'm going to do it because I just think I just need to kind of go scale back and just be on my own, doing what we do at Paranormal Roundtable. I am going to respect everybody's time slots. I try to do that. You guys and just not step on anybody's toes as best I can, whatever. But I got a lot of people to interview. I do. And I got a couple of them that have reached out to me. They're publicists. They have publicists, and they're like, hey, can you interview so-and-so? And I've been telling people no for so long that I need to get on the ball and get it done. And so that's something I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to. I'll try to time it to where I go before you guys or something, because I know after now it's Monica and Tex are on, right?
Yep, they start. Yeah, they come on at 10.
Yep, they'll be on in about 4 minutes. Yeah.
So that being said, I'm going to duck out. But Jill, great talking to you. Always wonderful to talk to you, and I think you and Brett are doing great work. The show, the Flash of Beauty, awesome. And it took a little guts too to name the second one the Paranormal, because Bigfoot and Paranormal, boy, oh god, if it's not a booger hiding behind a tree, then it's not
right.
And so you just get tired of that crap, but whatever, And so, anyways, it's been nice. It's been fun co-hosting with you guys, and I would love to be able to come back every now and then. And
anytime,
you guys,
anytime.
But
we actually, I will tell you, we have a big guest coming up, and I would like for you to be on as well.
What week is that?
We don't know.
I haven't exactly booked it. We haven't found a date yet, but I'll message
when
you.
we do.
Yeah. It's a good one, and we'll talk about it after.
Yeah, and I think too, like on my show, I have to watch, myself be. Because I don't want to be impolite at times, and you have people that are your audience, and I don't want to, and it is what it is. So, and I'm sorry to the person, whoever the name, I can't remember the name of the person, Pixie. I wasn't trying to be rude or whatever, but I just thought, come on.
Like I said, everybody knows the rules. It's not a big secret.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so Krista and Brandy, I'm going to duck out. Jill, it was great talking to you as always. I would like to get you on to record for the podcast, because we have a big audience on the podcast, and it reaches a lot more people than our regular live stream or whatever. And for sure, Blondes and Booze, you guys, I think what do you have today? You guys, earlier, I think you had almost 250 in there. It's a pretty good chat.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty good thing going, man. And so if everybody who's listening and is going to listen to the replay of this, be sure and subscribe, because they get the views, but they're not getting the subscribers, and that's not fair. They need to get the subscribers. They deserve it.
Thank you.
And I stand by this. I've said this, and since the inception of PRT, I've been a champion as much as possible. I've championed the women in this field, because I do think that they don't get as much credit. Mm-hmm. They've been overlooked a lot. And so I've fought a lot of battles for women. Bettina can tell you that. I mean, that, but that's something that I think that people need to start, being a little more understanding and trying to further that part of this field, because I do believe that women are more sensitive when it comes to psychic and ability. Mm-hmm. And I think it has something, I've said this on the show years ago, that it has something to do with, the way that we developed as people going way back. The men were out hunting and doing whatever. The woman had to take care of the children. She had to know if there was a raid or something was going on. You had to have a sixth sense. I believe that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So, but a credit to you guys. I'm going to head out.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Josh.
It was wonderful being with all you beautiful blonde women today. It was great.
You're
We'll
welcome.
just talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah. We'll talk. I'll see you guys. Good night.
All right.
See you, Josh.
All right. Bye.
So, Jill, anyway, so I was thinking this. Sometimes Krista and I hold all women panels, and I would love to have you back on the show to talk about, all the other things. Just we would like to hear more of your views and stuff on that. If that would be okay, if we could do that.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah, because we like to get the girls together and just chat.
We haven't done that in a while.
We haven't, and we need to. We really need to.
Yeah, we usually Letitia Nunnelly's one that comes on for that, and then Heather Mosier, Small Town Monster, she'll come on and
She'll come on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Selene, we've had her on.
Yep.
So
many. Yeah. So we'll have to do that soon because, like I said, we haven't done that in a while, and we need to. We need to have girls chat.
Girls' night.
Girls' night.
Yeah, girls' night for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jill, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share and talk about what we're doing. And this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, we're going to get you on again, so we'll have even more fun. I promise.
Okay.
For sure. We tomorrow night we have like a what do you want to call it, Brandy? A pre-show to the conference, I guess.
I would guess. Yeah, I would say that we have a pre-show. So to the Alabama Bigfoot Conference, for everybody who's going or not going, we have some of the speakers going to be showing up tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central. So make sure you tune in, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that notification button.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, until tomorrow night, thank you once again, Jill. Also, real quick here, I want to thank Spillin' Tea with Spunky Sparky, Chris, I believe that's Chris Kramer, DCG, Tex, Sugar Britches, and Gwen Hunt. Thank you all very much for the super
Thank
chat.
you, everybody.
So until tomorrow night, guys, have a good night, and we'll see you then. Good night.